3 years ago, at the time of releasing this video, Hayao Miyazaki's most unique and confusing film was released. At times, a very melancholic and slow-paced work that examined the finer details of its protagonist, the young boy Mahito, and at others, a fantastical adventure overflowing with colors and otherworldly elements, blurring the lines of reality and very nearly breaking the entire film. The movie, in its totality, flows more akin to a memory than it does as a period piece. Even then, this memory becomes distorted as it mixes in with past dreams, blending together all the sorrows of an old man into a bizarre portrait that gives as much credence to the existence of fascist parakeets as it does to the firebombing of a hospital. A life split between the weight of the world and the aspirations to break free into the realm of fiction. Yet this fiction becomes tainted by the real world, as the person who creates the fiction is a product of the world, and as such the fiction becomes grotesque. This meaning comes through very sharply for a film that is usually quite confusing in its messaging in a purposeful fashion. It is seen clearly through the final conflict between Mahito and his great-uncle, the latter who believes he can separate himself from his surroundings and create something better, and the former who denies that a pure world can be made by an impure soul. But I believe there is another message within this movie, something more personal to Miyazaki that exists as a universal theme, one definitely in conversation with the aforementioned theme of fiction, but one that does not necessarily need the context of his previous works to understand. In Miyazaki's previous film, The Wind Rises, we follow the fictionalized life of Jiro Horikoshi as he designs the Zero Plane, a man who timidly believes in peace, but his aspirations in aviation lead him to disregard the suffering caused by his work, as the Zero Plane, constructed under the Japanese Empire, was the first plane the Japanese could be proud of. Likewise, so was the first animated feature in Japan produced as a piece of imperial propaganda. Miyazaki clearly saw a through line of his work and that of Horikoshi. No matter the intent, his work was neutral and would be consumed by the society it was created in rather than serve as a force of change. Then why was it that the man so obsessed with airplanes completely did without them in his pinnacle masterpiece? The only signs of aircraft are the cockpit windows that Mahito briefly refers to as beautiful, and the never-seen plane that dropped the incendiaries that killed his mother. I cannot say for certain what compelled this decision, but I sense something deeper in the heart of this film. As if Miyazaki was clawing towards something even more core to his being than animation, something even more important to him than his very passion. In the lead-up to my rewatch of The Boy and the Heron, I viewed every single previous Miyazaki feature film and took notes on each one. What I found was that The Boy and the Heron broke many of the director's usual filmmaking choices. For the first example is the fact that the film lacks the usual boy and girl dynamic present in all of his previous films. What I mean is that each of his films has a boy or girl protagonist accompanied by a boy or girl deuteragonist, who acts as a complete foil to the former, but serves an important purpose in highlighting the good and the traits of the protagonists that they generally don't recognize in themselves. The two lead characters of this film are in the English language title of the movie, Mahito and the Heron. Mahito is a boy and the Heron is very male-coded to say the least. They share the most screen time together, and their dynamic is one of the most integral in the film. Mahito does spend a small portion towards the end of the film with his mother, fulfilling the boy-girl dynamic partially, but it is not as centrally focused as Hal and Sophie or Chihiro and Haku. Instead, this male friendship becomes one of the most important things in Mahito's journey of growth. Before we can expand on that point, however, another thing must be noted. Unlike previous Miyazaki films, our protagonist Mahito lacks both passion and youthful energy that is characteristic of his movies. Even exceptions like Marco and Porco Rosso still carry either one of those two things, like the passion half of this equation, and Sophie, whose timidness is comparable to Mahito, but she finds immense passion in her life regardless. Mahito, instead, exists in between others, but never as an agent of his own life. His choices are already dictated by higher forces. As such, he follows his orders diligently, but with no spark. He does things merely out of the expectation that they are to be done. This is what defines Mahito and places him in a whole new category of Miyazaki protagonist, a character who not only fundamentally lacks love in his life, but has no will to create his own love, or at least so it seems. The most defining aspect of Mahito that we see in this movie is his longing for his mother. While never stated or shown, it is clear through his outlook that the love his mother showed him was the most important thing in his world. The loss of his mother was so palpable that he doesn't show joy for the entire length of the film until he is seated across from her again and eating her bread. Thus, it is understandable why he harbors such a quiet resentment of his father, who in Mahito's eyes has abandoned the memory of his mother far too quickly. By his logic, anyone who moves on faster than him must not have loved his mother at all, and if that is the case, he will no longer believe in the capacity of them to love him. Everything takes on a superficial feel. How can a mother be replaced? How can a father go on business as usual? The contradiction arises from Mahito's childlike way of viewing the world and the adult's more pragmatic view of the world. The adults in Mahito's life have to keep moving on, and they have all been doing so for a long time, seemingly forgetting that they too once saw loss differently. Mahito, of course, cannot be expected to understand this intuitively. The first action Mahito takes in this film of his own accord is to smash a rock against his own head. The boy has been so trapped by his surroundings that he knows only a drastic action will be able to give him what he wants. In this case, to avoid school and all its troubles, because returning to school too would be returning to life as normal, an insult to his mother. However, self-harm is not a good thing, nor is it a long-term viable solution to one's issues. In the film, it does not alert the adults to the true nature of Mahito's suffering, leading to further complications as his father insists on finding the culprit who injured his son. Mahito does his best to control the situations he finds himself in by hiding his emotions and playing the part he knows others want from him. He listens to his new mother speak and nods along, and he follows his father's ideas with no hesitation. Yet, when he visits the sick Natsuko and she gently touches the injury on his head while lamenting on how she hasn't done enough for her late sister, Mahito briefly shows a reaction, not one of joy but more of surprise. He quickly collects himself, but his outlook has been challenged. The easy world he had formed in his mind that made Natsuko and his father just distant beings that had to be occasionally appeased, gives way to something else, something he thought he had lost along with his mother, that being true, unconditional love. Natsuko, in a moment of weakness, actually reveals something Mahito needed to hear, that she had not forgotten his mother either, and beyond that, the fact he is as cherished by Natsuko as his mother once cherished him. After this, Mahito enters the world of his granduncle, and the rest of the story follows, bringing along with it another theme, this being that forgetting is natural and proper. Mahito is told by the Heron to forget his experiences, and so it can be reasoned that as he may forget the granduncle's world, so too will he slowly forget aspects of his mother. However, he carried with him from that world a single stone, a reminder of what he had visited, something that may help him never forget his adventure, and as much the stone is as a part of the other world he carries with him, so is his very being a testament to his mother. Not only is he described as looking exactly like her, but the last words his mother leaves him with is that she will return to the world she knows she will die in, because she wants to have him. His mother's love is the reason for his existence, a reminder to love and respect himself, and a confirmation that there are always more people out there to find and fall in love with. Thus, a tension resolves between the need to move on and the desire to cling to love. It turns out it is not a binary. The outsized effect of the people in Mahito's life, and in ours too, is not something that disappears but is in fact incorporated into our beings. The love continues, and we never move on. We just learn to live a new life with the things we learn. This to me is the actual message of the movie. Why does a terrifying Heron man haunt Mahito? His voice is not appealing, and the only trait that attracts Mahito to him at first is the fact he freely speaks of his mother, unlike everyone else he knows. However, the two of them soon become friends, and the Heron develops not only a deep concern for the boy, but a strong connection as well. Unconditional love is far more present than we perceive because it does not always present itself as we think it does. Mahito knew what it looked like from his mother, and when he lost his mother he thought the love for him had gone as well, but this was not the case. It survived in his father. When Shoichi goes looking for him, he can be seen packing a Meiji chocolate bar in his bag. The reason is so he can give it to his son when he finds him. Though Shoichi's love expresses itself in a way not as easily perceivable as his mother's love once was, it is no different. Love can be brutal and heartbreaking. Think of the terror when Mahito finds Natsuko in the delivery room. This whole movie is bursting at the seams, from a mysterious meteorite exploding to the downpour of tears from Lady Himi's eyes, or the face of the Heron swelling up from their neck, or the blood gushing forth from Mahito's face. Everything in this film is trapped and desperately trying to break forth to erupt in a torrent of emotion, because only in these episodes do we see how important we are to each other. While Miyazaki has portrayed love in very theatric and beautiful ways before, this film delves deeper into the different ways love can be seen and felt. So, unconditional love does not always look like Hal and Sophie, or San and Ashitaka, or even the dearness of a mother. Sometimes it looks like a horrifying herring creature with a fearful voice and disturbing eating habits. Miyazaki asks us to appreciate all the love we receive in this world, in all its forms, for all of it is meaningful.